Just imagine that you were traveling on a plane that is flying over the Atlantic Ocean at an altitude of 39,000 feet, and below you is just the deep, cold water of the expanding ocean. Your plane is just 2,700 kilometers away from its destination, and right then you find out that your aircraft's fuel has run out. So think, what will happen to you and the passengers who were traveling with you on the same aircraft? Exactly this happened with Air Transat Flight 236, which was going from Toronto to Lisbon. This aircraft was flying over that part of the ocean where no land is visible for miles around. And here, running out of fuel means only one thing: death. A warm welcome to another video on Money Basics Explained. If you are watching a Money Basics Explained video for the first time, please like the video and also subscribe to the channel. This incident happened on August 23, 2001, when at Toronto Airport, an Air Transat A330 was being prepared to be sent from Toronto to Lisbon. This was going to be a 7-hour non-stop flight, so, according to the aircraft's capacity, 48 metric tons of fuel was being filled in it, which was enough to go from Toronto to Lisbon. There were 293 passengers and 13 crew members, including 2 pilots on this flight, who had no idea what trouble they were going to encounter on the way. The pilot captain was 48-year-old senior officer Robert Piche, who had 16,000 hours of experience flying. The first officer was Dirk DeJager, and he also had a full 5,000 hours of experience handling flights. Talking about the aircraft, it was Airbus's most advanced model of that time, which was only about 2 years old. Overall, the point was that at that time, neither was there any lack in the pilot's experience, nor was there any kind of fault in the aircraft. According to routine, everything seemed fine, and after completing all the flood checks like this, the pilot took off the flight with ATC's permission. Immediately after takeoff, the pilot turned the aircraft towards its destination across the Atlantic Ocean. Within a few minutes, the aircraft reached its cruising altitude, that is, 39,000 feet. Normally, on such long flights, the pilot does not have to control the aircraft manually, because about 80% of the aircraft's control is handled by the autopilot system installed in the aircraft itself. The pilots just monitor the indications on the aircraft and keep updating their location to the control room. 4 hours had passed since Flight 236 took off, but until now, everything was running normally. All the passengers on the aircraft were also fast asleep due to the night. The aircraft had reached the exact center of the Atlantic Ocean, and this was the time when the aircraft's autopilot system started giving a strange warning signal. In this warning, a strange reading was appearing on the monitor, showing high oil pressure in the aircraft's right engine. The oil quantity was low, and the oil temperature was also showing low. The pilot had seen this type of error for the first time in his career. Both pilots immediately opened the flight manual and tried to know about this strange error. Normally, when the aircraft takes off, the oil temperature starts increasing with time. 4 full hours had passed here, but here it was indicating low temperature, which didn't seem right in any way. And unfortunately, they couldn't find anything like this in the aircraft's manual book either. Because the pilots didn't want to take any kind of risk, both pilots contacted the Air Canada Air Transat Maintenance Unit and told them about this error. But they also didn't know much about this. Even the aircraft's right engine was showing incorrect fuel reading. But so far, there had been no issue of any kind in the aircraft's flight, and for this reason, both pilots also relaxed, thinking that maybe some fuel indicator sensor of the aircraft was giving an incorrect fuel reading, and because of this, the pilot felt there was no danger. Therefore, the pilot completely ignored this warning.
But after half an hour, the captain received a second warning signal on the aircraft, and this warning was not related to oil pressure, but related to fuel. Normally, in commercial airliners, fuel is filled equally in both wings so that the aircraft's balance remains the same during the journey. But here it was noticed that in Flight 236, both wings did not have equal fuel, and the fuel quantity in the right wing was much less compared to the left. Even in such a situation, the control of the aircraft is in the pilot's hands because this issue can be corrected during the flight itself. To fix this issue, the captain opened the cross-feed valves of both wings so that fuel from the left wing started reaching the right wing, and in this way, the quantity in both fuel tanks became equal. For the next 10 minutes, it seemed like everything was fine, but after that, a final warning came from the aircraft, which meant no fuel. No pilot wants to face this signal during their duty, and that too in an aircraft that was completely filled with passengers. But the pilots couldn't understand why the right fuel tank kept emptying, and now, even after combining the fuel from both wings, there wasn't enough fuel left to reach Lisbon. The thing that both pilots were ignoring initially had now become very serious for them, because there weren't many options to divert the aircraft from the middle of the ocean now. In reality, they had only one option, and that was Azores Airport. This airport is built on a small island right in the middle of the ocean, which is called Terceira Island. And then, without thinking twice, the captain contacted Santa Maria Air Traffic Control and told them that they wanted to land in this area due to fuel shortage. But until now, the pilot himself didn't know whether he would even be able to reach this island with the fuel left in the aircraft, because only 7 tons of fuel was left in the aircraft. Although this fuel is a lot, this fuel wasn't even 6% of the A330's fuel capacity, and it was decreasing very rapidly. But now it was necessary to know why the fuel was actually decreasing. Was some faulty sensor giving incorrect readings this time too, or was the fuel really decreasing? Fuel decreasing like this was possible only in one scenario, that fuel was leaking in large quantities somewhere. But in the darkness of night and clouds, it was absolutely not possible to monitor the aircraft from the outside. And now the condition had become such that 1 ton of fuel was running out every 5 minutes. The captain was completely clear that fuel was leaking from somewhere, and if it continued like this, only 25 minutes of fuel would remain, making it absolutely impossible to reach Azores Airport. During this time, both pilots were continuously in contact with the maintenance unit and air traffic control. The maintenance unit instructed the captain to bring the aircraft from 39,000 feet to an altitude of 20,000 feet to confirm the fuel leak, but the captain clearly refused to do so, and the reason for this was that the pilot believed that even if the fuel leak was confirmed, it would not be possible to take the aircraft back up. At least they would have the option to glide at 39,000 feet. In the next few minutes, all doubts were removed when the aircraft's right engine caught fire due to the fuel leak, and in no time, panic spread among all the passengers sitting in the aircraft. Now, 45 tons of fuel and only one engine were left in the aircraft. Therefore, it was not possible to balance the aircraft with one engine, so slowly the aircraft's altitude started decreasing. On the other side, at Terceira Airport, emergency fire trucks and emergency crew had alerted everyone. The aircraft, which was still 240 kilometers away from Terceira Airport, now only had 600 kilograms of fuel left. And then, what all passengers were fearing happened. Due to running at full thrust, the aircraft's left engine also caught fire, and now this flight was gliding in the air over the ocean without any engine. And here, the captain's decision not to drop the aircraft to 20,000 feet proved absolutely correct.
Due to both engines shutting down, the aircraft was completely dark. Only a few monitors of the aircraft were running, which were connected to the aircraft's automatic turbine system, which spun with the wind speed and generated a little bit of electricity. Terceira Airport was now 120 kilometers away from the aircraft, and the aircraft had descended 3,000 feet. The plane was now at an altitude of 9,000 feet, and the captain now had to cover this distance by making the aircraft glide like this. A deep silence prevailed among all the passengers, which was pointing towards a big disaster. The senior pilot had only 2 options. The first was that if the aircraft could not reach the airport, he would have to land it in the ocean. For this reason, all the passengers sitting in the aircraft had been prepared for an emergency landing on water. Landing in the ocean was dangerous in every way. If the passengers somehow survived the accident while landing in the ocean, they could drown in the water. And even if they didn't drown in the water, they could become victims of hypothermia due to the cold water and die.
Normally, gliding an aircraft without engines at the right height is also very difficult, because at that time, everything depends on the plane's manual control, and in this condition, the aircraft's altitude loss rate is 2,000 feet per minute. Meaning in just the next 15 minutes, either the aircraft will land at the airport or it will fall into the ocean and be destroyed. When the plane's distance from Terceira Island was only 15 kilometers, even then the aircraft was at an altitude of 6,100 feet. But normally at such a distance, the aircraft's altitude should be only 3,000 feet. In this condition, if the pilot tried to reduce altitude by diving the nose, the plane's speed would become very high, and due to this, the chances of a crash landing would increase. Because of this, the plane's pilot made the aircraft take a 360-degree turn there, and when this turn was completed, the aircraft's distance from the airport was the same as before, but the aircraft's altitude had dropped to 4,000 feet. This altitude was still a little high, but not so high that another 360-degree round could be taken. Therefore, the pilot positioned the aircraft in line with the runway and made it do some S-turns. This gave the aircraft more opportunity to reduce its altitude. Normally, during landing, the flaps on both wings of the aircraft are raised to create drag, and engine thrust is also increased, which raises the plane's nose and makes landing easier. But Flight 236 didn't have engine thrust, so this landing was going to be very different from a normal landing. The pilot had only one chance to land the plane. Either this aircraft would land or there would be a very big crash. Finally, the plane hits the runway with a strong jolt and 8 out of the aircraft's 12 tires burst. The aircraft had a little difficulty stopping, but finally skidding, it came to a halt. As soon as the plane stopped, its landing gear caught fire, but the aircrew members present there controlled it immediately. Flight 236 was the first and last passenger plane in aviation history to set a world record for gliding the longest time in the air without engines. When the investigation was conducted regarding the fuel leak in the aircraft's right engine, it was found that before takeoff in Toronto, the maintenance team had replaced a very large part of the aircraft. But that part was from some other plane, and due to loose fitting, vibration occurred in it, which created a very large crack in the fuel line passing nearby. And due to this, a major accident was narrowly averted. I hope you will also like and share this video of Money Basics Explained enough. That's all for today. See you in another video.